Mike Mentzer was one of the most enigmatic minds to ever grace the sport. This brilliance led him to ruthlessly question the norms of his time, questioning every rule and forming rules of his own. Fate, however, is indifferent to conviction. This brilliance would morph into stubbornness and resentment, with isolation soon following. In the end, it was not his brilliance that failed him, but the stubborn grip, tightened by resentment, that refused to let it bend.
Тёмная ночь разделяет любимая нас.
Mike Mentzer was born on November 15, 1951, to a German father and Italian mother. He had an older sister named Marie, as well as an older brother named Elmer, and 2 years later, his younger brother named Ray was born. From an early age, he showed signs of a brilliant mind. Unlike the majority of kids his age, he wasn't just content with physical play. He read books much beyond his age, exploring ideas far ahead of his peers. Although his parents instilled values into him, he questioned everything, which made him stand out. He was an incredibly vigorous student and would spend hours a day studying, which earned him all A's. One day he was in a drugstore with his mom, and while she was away shopping, he looked at the Muscle Men magazines of the day.
I was at a drugstore with my mother in my hometown of Ephrata, Pennsylvania, and while she was off doing some shopping, I was looking over the magazines, and all of a sudden my attention was arrested by the sight of a muscle man, and I knew instantly, there was no lag time, this is what I was going to be, and it was a love affair, and I've been doing it ever since.
Later that year, his dad bought him his first set of weights as a Christmas present, as well as a training booklet that said train no more than 3 times a week, so he did just that. For the years before in his life, only intellectual pursuits were of much interest to him, but now, for the first time ever, a physical pursuit was. His biggest idol was Bill Pearl, the most famous bodybuilder of his time. A few years later, he attended the very first Mr. Olympia as an audience member, watching Larry Scott take the win. Mike Mentzer's father was surprised by Mike's commitment to the gym, and arranged for him to train with a man named John Myers. Myers was a strength athlete, and Mike subsequently switched his training during this period. By the time Mike was 15, he was already benching 370 pounds, at a mere 165 pounds. Shortly after graduating high school, he began to compete in bodybuilding shows. He first competed in small events, his first ever being Mr. Lancaster County in 1969, which he would win. He would then go on to win Mr. Pennsylvania the next year. Shortly after, he entered the Air Force. By this point, his training had ballooned to 3 hours a day and 6 days a week. Was all this volume really giving him results? These questions were on his mind as he began to enter more physique contests. He entered the AAU, Amateur Athletic Union, Mr. America. Despite entering with loads of confidence, he placed 10th. With first place being awarded to one Casey Viator. Following the end of the contest, he met both Viator and his trainer, Arthur Jones. Jones then fully reintroduced the idea of low volume training to him.
My first communication with him, as I said, was by phone. It was not really a conversation per se, but a lecture, during which he explained to me in the most precise, scrupulously objective language possible, the actual science of productive bodybuilding exercise. The nature of the cause and effect relationship between intense exercise. Such exercise had to be brief and infrequent if it was to be productive. During that conversation, Peter, I realized that I was not the expert I had thought.
However, shortly after the contest, Mentzer suffered severe shoulder injury, and from 1971 to 1974, he didn't compete, nor did he train. This was a major setback for him, and he learned one major lesson from it. Arthur Jones was right. This, along with Viator's win, convinced Mentzer that low-volume training was the way to go. In 1975, he left the Air Force, as well as he went back to training. Around the same time, he also enrolled in the University of Maryland, with plans to become a psychiatrist. He entered the 1975 Mr. America, confident of victory. However, after seeing the physique of Robbie Robinson, he knew first was impossible. He ended up placing 3rd in the medium division, behind Robbie Robinson, as well as Roger Collard. Despite placing 3rd, he was able to strike a deal with Muscle Magazine and landed on their front page, where he would take the chance to advertise low-volume training. He also believed Arthur Jones didn't go far enough. He meticulously analyzed the ideas, testing every single one of them, and then making his own version of low-volume training. The next year, he entered a 1976 Mr. America, along with his younger brother Ray.
Don't, however, worry about your individual potential. Potential is only the expression of a possibility, something that can be assessed accurately only in retrospect. In other words, You'll never know how good you might have become unless you try. So let's get with it.
Since Robbie Robinson didn't come back to compete in that contest that year, as well as Mike has seen a massive improvement from the year before, Mike took the crown for not just the medium division, but the whole thing. Meanwhile, his brother Ray placed second in the tall division. The satisfaction that Mentzer got from that win was the most satisfied he ever got from any bodybuilding contest, even more than his other future wins. His rise continued. In the next year, he smashed the 1977 North American Championships and won the 1977 Mr. Universe. All of these wins solidified his belief in the low-volume training system. He continued to promote it as the way to train. Seeing all of the success in bodybuilding and seeing less and less of an interest in becoming a psychiatrist, he dropped out of university to focus on bodybuilding. Later on, with the assistance of Joe Weider, he moved to the heart of bodybuilding, Los Angeles, California. When it came time for the 1978 Mr. Universe, he did something that had never been done before and has not been done since. He earned a perfect score of 300. This completely surprised his competitors, and he easily took the win. This moment was pivotal in his career. He credited it to his low-volume training, and in his eyes, it made it completely undeniable that low-volume training was superior to all other training methods. His low-volume training was inspired by his objectivist philosophy. He believed philosophy and bodybuilding were two sides of the same coin. Objectivism holds critical thinking to be a central value, and at the end of the day, he didn't care what no magazine said. He cared what actually gave him results and had tangible proof behind it. His low-volume training was formed via intense critical thinking and his belief that reason triumphs tradition. Following his 1978 Mr. Universe win, he decided it was no longer time just to stay amateur, and he went pro. After he turned pro, it went off to a phenomenal start. He started off by winning the Southern Pro Cup, beating Robbie Robinson. However, Robinson took back the crown at the Pittsburgh Invitational. Then he placed third in the 1979 Night of Champions, with Robinson taking the first yet again and Danny Padilla taking second. However, tragedy struck. A mere 2 weeks after the Night of Champions, his mother Marie passed away. She was only 56. Mike was a very private man, and with the death of his mother, he quietly mourned. A fracture in his mind occurred that no physique could heal. For about 6 weeks, he stopped training completely. He gained weight as his muscle mass began to rapidly decline, as a deep depression began to set in. There were whispers that he was done, that this up-and-coming bodybuilder had nothing left. However, he and he alone began to slowly get back up. Grief began to no longer hold him back. He used it as fuel. With a mere 4 months until the 1979 Mr. Olympia, he began to wipe his tears. He trained with a purpose like never before. It was about proving he was back, proving his training worked, proving the mind, and proving that even in the face of a loss, a man can forge perfection from pain. He trained hard. His opponents in the heavyweight division weren't a hard challenge. Robbie Robinson was in the lightweight league and had suffered a mild decline of his own and simply didn't match up. The favorite to win the Mr. Olympia was a 2-time reigning champion, Frank Zane. One judge by the name of Jim Mannion infamously said, "If Mike doesn't win, it's a crime." By the end of it, it came down to just two. Frank Zane, the lightweight winner and 2-time Mr. Olympia champion, and Mike Mentzer, the heavyweight champion. It was extremely close, with Mentzer smoothing out slightly after prejudging, which gave Zane the edge. In an incredibly close decision, Zane won. Despite not winning, Mentzer was happy. He had a comeback and would give the Olympia another try. With the dawn of a new decade, Mentzer was beyond the word ready. He didn't just prep. He lived and breathed Mr. Olympia. As examples, he started dieting in February, despite the fact the contest was in October. He read an article saying he'll win, and when it came to his training, it was beyond the phrase dialed in. His high-intensity training system, built on short, brutal, and infrequent sessions, reached its finale. Every rep was meticulously tracked, and he trained like his life depended on it. This is also when he began to take amphetamines, in particular meth, not to get high, but as a tool of focus and appetite suppression. And as the contest drew nearer, many things began to happen. His use of amphetamines began to become a major issue, with him slowly becoming addicted. As well as, a certain somebody began lurking from the shadows. Arnold, while prepping for his upcoming movie Conan the Barbarian, announced he was coming back out of retirement to compete one last time, only 1 day before the contest. Reactions were mixed. Mentzer was absolutely furious, believing Arnold would rig the contest. Meanwhile, Frank Zane, Boyce Coe, and Tom Platz lamented that Arnold wasn't going to be in prime condition and would tarnish his legacy. As the sun rose on October 4th, 1980, in Sydney, Australia, tensions were high. Arnold's legs, midsection, and triceps were lacking. Frank Zane had just recovered from a life-threatening injury, it was noticeably smaller. Meanwhile, Mike Mentzer was in his best condition ever. Other fan favorites included Chris Dickerson and Boyer Coe. Following judging, which included Arnold doing wrong poses and posing to hide his flaws, the judges selected two finalists, Chris Dickerson and Arnold.
And I have to be very honest that this was the highest level of competition I've ever faced in any competition in my life.
I think what Mike carried was the bitterness of losing to Arnold. To him, it was not subjective. And it was not a subjective sport, and it was supposed to be accurate what's the word I'm looking for? Objective. Yeah. Okay. And according to the criteria that he had, he should be the winner.
Well, my immediate gut level reaction was paradoxical as it may sound, was laughter. I just started laughing. It was ludicrous. It was so obviously an incorrect decision that my first response was just to laugh.
It's interesting, at the 1980 Olympia, the only people who saw Arnold as the winner were the 7 judges and his closest friends. None of the other competitors saw him as the winner. None of the audience, or very few, only those that were his friends.
Arnold was then declared winner. Chris Dickerson was second, Frank Zane was third, and Boyer Coe and Mike Mentzer were tied for fourth, although Mike Mentzer was given the 5th place prize. Everyone except Arnold was angry at the result. Chris Dickerson yelled he couldn't believe it, and Frank Zane reportedly threw his trophy against the wall, although he claimed he dropped it. Meanwhile, Mike Mentzer was full with a level of rage and resentment that is hard to put into words. The 1980 Mr. Olympia tarnished the reputation of the IFBB forever, especially in the eyes of Mentzer. Mentzer, along with Zane, Coe, and Roger Walker, all agreed to boycott the 1981 Mr. Olympia, which was then won by Franco Columbu, a friend of Arnold. When Arnold stepped off the arena and back to the plane to leave, the message to Mentzer was clear. It didn't matter how much critical thinking or training he did. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered. Although Zane, Coe, and Walker all returned in 1981, Mentzer didn't. In fact, he never returned. He was done with bodybuilding. At the age of 29, in his prime, he thought, if truth can't win, why even try? What followed wasn't a clean break, but a complete descent. He became more bitter the older he got. He spiraled into philosophy obsessions, arguments, and complete and utter isolation. His amphetamine use went out of control. He was a full-blown addict, checking into rehab several times.
Talk about negative things. Remember one day I was walking to Gold's Gym, and Mike's in the gutter, laying there like a drunken guy. I'm like, oh my God, Mike. He didn't hear me. I'm like, then he walked in when we were training and warming up, taking his pictures off the walls. And I said to my training partner, Tony, if I ever get like that, keep the pictures, stay on the wall, okay? Don't let me do that. I was sort of making a joke, but I felt so sad for Mike. I'm like, Mike.
In 1980, Mike just didn't lose a title, but he lost himself. The tragedy in Mike Mentzer is almost Shakespearean. It's one of, if not the greatest tragedy in all of bodybuilding. A promising new and young bodybuilder, torn to shreds by corruption within the system and his own mind. In the end, on a lowly June day in 2001, Mike Mentzer would die in his sleep, with his brother Ray joining him 2 days later. Not on stage, not even a hospital either, but a small apartment, far from the arena that once gave him awe. And so the tragedy closes. Mike Mentzer, undone by forces within and without, a brilliant fire extinguished by the cold hands of corruption and inner torment.
He got upset and carried this bitterness and carried this anger with him everywhere he went. So Mike, as good as he is and as generous as he was to me and helpful and as a friend he was to me, carried the hatred of losing the 80 Mr. Olympia on his back. And I think that's one of the reasons it caused him to die. When you carry bitterness, it's bad. It's like cancer, probably causes cancer. Your attitude, your negative energy probably makes your whole body do weird stuff, Because if you think bad and expect bad and feel bad, you die.